One of the most scholarly English poets of the 17th century, John Milton, has been noted for the total devotion that he paid towards his artistic ideals as well as involvement in religious and political life as a Puritan, peculiarly. He supported the Parliament during the Civil War and, in fact, wrote many tracts attacking royalty. And the strain on his eyes, the hard work, and the writing made him blind by 1651. And in fact, it was after he became totally blind that he completed his all time masterpiece, The Paradise Lost, the greatest epic poem that uh, describes the fall of man from God's kingdom. The other famous works that he has written is Comus and Lycidas. Now, the poem that we have to study today was written in 1637. Lycidas is a pastoral elegy to commemorate the death of Milton's dear friend from Cambridge, Edward King. Now, in this monody, the author bewails a learned friend, and he also, other than commemorating his friend, he also comments on the corruption in clergy in those times. Now, as we know, elegy is a poem written in tribute, in memory of someone beloved to the poet, and a pastoral elegy is an elegy, a poem that bewails the loss of a beloved one in the context of a pastoral setting. Usually, in pastoral poetry, the setting is a serene grassland, meadow type of background with shepherds and sheep and all that romantic countryside landscape. Now, in pastoral elegy, the poet considers himself as a shepherd and probably is mourning the loss of a fellow shepherd. And that is what happens in the Lycidas also. In Lycidas, Milton considers himself, or the poet considers himself as a poet, as a shepherd, and his companion who has passed away is also a shepherd. So, this is the concept of a pastoral elegy. Usually, pastoral elegies are stylized poems where a shepherd is mourning for a fellow shepherd. And we can see a lot of similar mournful literary devices instrumental in pastoral elegies, like pathetic fallacy. For example, even the trees and the leaves and the flowers are weeping for the loss of this uh, shepherd. So, in that case, pathetic fallacy happens to be a much favored literary device in case of pastoral elegies. And also, it is a record of the happy moments of life, a remembrance of the things past. And usually, pastoral elegies are set in a peaceful, idyllic scene in a pastoral area. And coming to Lycidas, it was written in 1637, and Milton's return to writing poetry 4 years after Comus. That is what this poem marks. The poem marks Milton's return to writing poetry 4 years after Comus. Now, Lycidas begins with an invocation of the poem to plants and leaves and flowers, where the poet has come to pluck the berries of ivies, myrtles, and laurels, even though it is not time yet for them to get ripe. The berries are harsh and crude, but still the poet has come to pluck them, even though they are unripe. With forced, rude fingers, he is shattering the leaves of these flowering plants of laurels, myrtles, and ivies before time, because he says that bitter constraint and sad occasion calls for this act, this cruel act of plucking the fruits before they get ripe, is because of a sad occasion. He says that the sad occasion compels him to disturb the timing of their season because the sad occasion, he explains that Lycidas is dead. He is dead before his prime years, young Lycidas, and he has gone away. So this is the sad occasion with which the poet begins the poem, in which he comes to pluck the leaves and berries of certain plants. Now, laurels, myrtles, and ivies are all plant leaves that are used to crown people. So, these flowers are being plucked, these plants and berries are being plucked to show that the poet is using them to lay tributes to his beloved friend Lycidas, who has gone away to the realms of death. And as the first stanza continues, the poet says, "Who would not sing for Lycidas?" Okay, if anybody, if it, he asks whether anybody will not remember Lycidas and sing mournful songs, because Lycidas was very dear to everybody. And here in the lines of the first stanza, we are brought to know that Lycidas himself was a poet and he built the lofty rhyme. And so, because Lycidas was a very good friend to everybody, and because he is a talented poet, a budding young poet, he deserves to be remembered and he deserves to be paid a good tribute. Now, as the first stanza ends, we are given the accident that happened to Lycidas, how he died. And we understand that he died by drowning in water. So the poet says that Lycidas and his memories should not float upon the watery bier, the platform, unwept. Okay, he should not go away from this world to the other world without tears. So that is the context of the poem. He should not be gone to the other world without the token of honor or token of tributes duly paid to him. He deserves an elegy. So, this is the context of the elegy. Lycidas explained or narrated in the first stanza. So the first stanza shows the context of the poem, the sad occasion of the poem, why the poet has come to pluck laurels, myrtles, and ivies and their berries before they get ripe, before it is time, because it is a sad occasion which compels the poet to disturb the season. It's not the right season for the poet to pluck these things, because Lycidas is dead as a young man, as a young talented man. It is not fair for his friends to leave him without bidding goodbye, without giving him a proper tribute. So that is the context of the poem, Lycidas.